The 2023 NHL UFA class is definitely pretty weak compared to really the last 5 years, certainly in terms of star power. Last offseason we had Johnny Gaudreau, 2021 we had Dougie Hamilton, 2020 Pietrangelo, 2019 Panarin, 2018 Tavares. There's definitely no superstar caliber players like that on the market this summer, but that's not to say there isn't going to be any quality players available. So in this video I wanted to go over a handful of NHL players who are set to become UFAs on July 1st that I believe could wind up being potential steals. If there's any players that I don't talk about in this video that you think could be a steal in free agency, be sure to let me know down below in the comments, and let's go ahead and get started with the first player. We have Max Pacioretty of the Carolina Hurricanes, who is certainly the biggest name player we're going to talk about in this video, and honestly Pacioretty is one of the biggest names set to become available in unrestricted free agency. Now that being said, that doesn't mean Max Pacioretty is going to get one of the biggest contracts or be one of the highest paid UFAs. His previous cap hit was $7 million. When you factor in his age, he's 34 years old, and his injury history, he's only played 92 games in the past 3 seasons combined. I don't think his next cap hit is going to come anywhere close to $7 million. And especially the recent injuries being as serious as they were, he's coming off of 2 torn Achilles. The most I could see a team giving him is a 1 or 2 year deal and a cap hit that probably maxes out around $3 million. $3 million probably if it's a 1 year deal, and if it's a 2 year deal, I could see it even being like $2 million or 2.5. And if that happens, that is a contract that I definitely believe has the potential to be a massive steal. Is it a little bit of a gamble given the injury history? Of course, but it's not a massive gamble. It's not like you'd have to sign Pacioretty to, a 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 year deal. I feel like the reward would definitely outweigh the risk when it comes to a signing like this. Pacioretty scored at a 40+ goal pace his final 2 seasons in Vegas, despite playing just 5 games this past season for Carolina. He had 3 goals in those 5 games. When Max Pacioretty is on the ice, he scores. He's an elite level finisher. It's just a matter of him staying on the ice. And that's not a knock against Max Pacioretty. The 2 Achilles injuries is just unbelievably crappy luck. The next player on my list, I have defenseman Erik Gustafsson, who spent the majority of this past season with the Washington Capitals and was then traded to the Toronto Maple Leafs at the deadline. To be blunt, Erik Gustafsson is a one-dimensional defenseman. All offense, no defense for the most part, but his offense is really good. He had 42 points this past season in just 70 games, which is the second most amount of points he's put up in a single season in his career, only behind the 60-point campaign he had with the Blackhawks back in 2019. Down the stretch for the Toronto Maple Leafs after the trade deadline, for the most part, Erik Gustafsson was a healthy scratch, especially in the playoffs. He suited up for just 2 games. He really just wasn't a great fit in Toronto whatsoever. His skill set, his play style, it just wasn't what the Maple Leafs needed. It wasn't the kind of game that was going to help them win playoff games given what they already had on their roster. But in an ideal situation, playing sheltered minutes at 5-on-5, being given power play quarterback responsibilities, I think Erik Gustafsson is somebody who can really thrive and be a budget beast of an offensive defenseman. His cap hit on his previous 2 contracts was just $800K. I feel like his next contract is going to come in a little bit higher than that, maybe $1.2 million, something along the lines of that. But even at that number, I still think Gustafsson can give a team great value. One team that comes to mind that I think would be a really good fit is the Minnesota Wild. Of all the teams that made the playoffs this past season, they scored the least amount of goals during the regular season. They didn't get a whole lot of offensive contributions from their blue line. The only 2 defensemen on the Wild this past season with 20 or more points was Jared Spurgeon, who had 34, and Kalen Addison, who had 29. And given the fact that the Wild already have defensemen like Spurgeon, like Addison, like Brodin, and like Jacob Middleton, Erik Gustafsson wouldn't have to play a ton of minutes at 5-on-5. Let him play maybe 13 or so minutes of even strength a night, give him the keys to the power play, and see what happens. I think that fit makes a lot of sense. Next up on the list, we have the first of 2 goaltenders we're going to talk about today, Laurent Brossoit of the Vegas Golden Knights. Stanley Cup champion Laurent Brossoit, who actually started the playoffs as Vegas' starting goaltender before going down with an injury in round 2 against the Oilers, and then Adin Hill took over and was unbeatable. During the regular season, Laurent Brossoit actually played more games at the AHL level than he did in the NHL for Vegas, but the games he did start in the regular season for Vegas, he was great. 7-0-3, a 2.17 goals against, and a .927 save percentage, a 6.52 goals saved above expected. A small sample size for sure, but those are some unreal numbers. Brossoit's previous cap hit was $2.325 million. If I had to guess, I think his next cap hit is probably going to come in a little bit lower than that, just because of his small sample size from this past season, playing just 19 total games combined between the regular season and the playoffs. I say this on the channel all the time because it's true. Goaltenders are incredibly unpredictable unpredictable. You really never know what you're going to get unless it's from, the absolute best of the best in the league. But I am fairly confident that at the very least, Laurent Brossoit can make a very reliable backup, and depending on the situation, could even be, a solid 1B option. And if you can get him at a really cheap price, that could wind up being a steal for sure. Moving along now, next up on the list, we have centerman Pius Suter, who has spent the last 2 seasons as a member of the Red Wings. As a Red Wings fan, I've really liked Pius Suter over the past couple of seasons. In a perfect world, I would like him to maybe re-sign with the Red Wings on a 1-year deal or something like that, but it was reported that Pius Suter is not interested in re-signing with the Red Wings on a short-term deal like that and wants to test unrestricted free agency, which I think definitely makes sense for him. Suter's certainly a guy who's not going to jump off the screen at you. He doesn't have, top-end speed or an elite level shot or fantastic hands or anything like that, but he's just a very smart, savvy player. Plays a responsible two-way game. He's killed penalties over the past few seasons with the Red Wings. I believe he actually led them in shorthanded goals this past season. Just a really solid bottom 6 centerman who is a little bit versatile as well, can slide up in the lineup if you have injuries. He actually scored at a 20-goal pace back in 2021 with the Blackhawks in his rookie season. His cap hit over the past couple of seasons with the Red Wings was $3.25 million. Can't imagine his next contract comes in any higher than that. If I had to guess, I think it'll probably come at a lower number, just solely based off of the fact that this past season he had 24 points, which is a career low for him. Maybe I'm being a little bit biased here because I'm a Red Wings fan and I've watched so much of Pius Suter over the last couple of seasons, but I really believe that if a team can sign him for a contract with a cap hit, let's say under $2.5 million, whatever team signs him will end up being really happy with that deal. Continuing on now, next up on the list, we have goaltender Mackenzie Blackwood of the New Jersey Devils. Now, this one's a little bit different because technically right now Mackenzie Blackwood is a restricted free agent, but there's been numerous reports indicating that the New Jersey Devils are not expected to give Blackwood a qualifying offer, which would make him an unrestricted free agent on July 1st. And I think it makes sense to believe those reports given how the last few seasons have went for Mackenzie Blackwood and how it seems like New Jersey kind of has their 1-2 punch in net solidified going forward with Vitek Vanacek and Akira Schmidt. I'm choosing to put Mackenzie Blackwood in this video despite the fact that his past couple of seasons in New Jersey have been very poor because of the fact that this is a guy who was once viewed as one of the best young goaltenders in the NHL, especially after his first 2 seasons in the league. I remember I made a video a couple of years ago predicting what Team Canada's roster would look like for the 2022 Winter Olympics in Beijing. Obviously, NHL players didn't end up going, but I had Mackenzie Blackwood as one of the Canadian goaltenders. And I don't think that at the time that was really too crazy of an opinion. Obviously, looking back at that now, you're like, oh, what was he thinking? But at the time, Blackwood was a really highly thought of young goaltender. And he's only 26 years old. I don't think Blackwood is a guy we should be writing off just yet. He definitely needs a change of scenery, and I think he's going to get that this offseason. I feel like he has the potential to be the Ilya Samsonov of this year's free agency class, where last season Washington didn't give Samsonov a qualifying offer. He went on to sign a 1-year deal with the Maple Leafs, kind of a 1-year prove-it deal, and as we know, Samsonov kind of took the reins as Toronto's starting goaltender. I would not be surprised to see something similar to that happen with Blackwood. Moving along now, the next player on the list, we have Connor Brown, who spent this past season as a member of the Washington Capitals, and he's a player that I have in this video kind of for the same reason as Max Pacioretty. Not that Connor Brown is, as big of a name as Pacioretty or has had the kind of career that Pacioretty has had, but Connor Brown is a guy who I think his next contract is likely going to come in at a pretty cheap number, cheaper than what you'd expect for somebody like Connor Brown, and probably not a long-term deal either because of the fact that he only played a handful of games this past season. He missed basically the entire year. After just 4 games, he suffered a lower body injury, would then require ACL surgery. So that's a pretty major surgery to be coming off of. I think similar to Pacioretty, the max we're going to see given to Connor Brown is a 1 or 2 year deal in like the $1.5 to $2 million range. And at that number, I think Connor Brown could be an absolute steal. In my opinion, he's everything you want in a middle 6 winger. He's got fantastic speed, really good forechecker, sneaky finishing ability as well. He's got 2 20+ goal seasons under his belt. He can play up and down the lineup. He's a good penalty killer. Really, I feel like he's the kind of player that every coach in the league would love to have on their team. And now for the final player we're going to talk about in this video, we have Pierre Engvall, who started this past season as a member of the Toronto Maple Leafs, was traded to the New York Islanders at the deadline. He's coming off of a season in which he put up a career-high 17 goals. I think Engvall definitely has the skill set and the tools to be a 20+ goal scorer. As somebody who has a lot of friends that are Maple Leafs fans, follow a lot of Maple Leafs fans on Twitter, watch Maple Leafs podcasts, the Steve Dangle podcast, that kind of thing. When Pierre Engvall was in Toronto, it sounded like the biggest complaint usually from Leafs fans fans was that he was just way too timid. The guy is 6'5", has fantastic speed, but just wouldn't get in those dirty areas enough, wouldn't finish his hits enough, and overall just a really inconsistent player. Engvall is only 27, so he is going to be one of the younger UFAs on the market. This is a guy that I feel like if he can put it all together and just start to consistently play with a little bit more bite, be tougher to play against, can really be, an ideal forechecking third line winger who, has scoring ability as well. Like I said, I think he has the capability of being a 20 goal scorer. His previous cap hit was $2.25 million. If I had to guess, I think his next cap hit is probably going to come in around the same, or at least somewhere close to that, and I feel like that could definitely end up being a steal if this is a guy who can, be that 20 goal scorer and be, a little bit tougher to play against as well. So that is going to wrap up today's video. Those are some players who are set to become unrestricted free agents on July 1st that I feel like could wind up being steals depending on the kind of contract that they sign. Like I said at the beginning of the video, if there's any players that I didn't mention today that you feel like could end up being a steal of a free agent, be sure to let me know who those players are down below in the comments. If you guys enjoyed today's video and you're excited for free agency, please be sure to leave it a like. That's the best way to show your support. And most importantly, if this was your first time checking out the channel and you want more NHL content just like this, be sure to hit that subscribe button, and I'll talk to you all soon.